Ramos, and we have Representative David Weeks.
Can you hear me? Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, let me begin by thanking you for your leadership and how you've handled the operation of this special ad hoc committee. I appreciate your leadership and I appreciate the chance to serve with my fellow. I have a tendency to talk church talk to y'all. That's just the way I talk with my fellow brothers and sisters of the legislature, and I appreciate all of your perspectives. Some I agree with, some I don't, but that's the way the legislative process works. Mr. Chairman, when we were charged by Speaker Merle Smith with providing recommendations to him and I guess to the Judiciary Committee on abortion legislation based on the testimony we received and the recommendations from the public, one of the things that he charged us with is that we should get significant input from the citizens of South Carolina, that we would provide thoughtful and prudent recommendations to himself and, of course, to the Judiciary Committee and then on to the full House of Representatives. And I know that we've had a chance to hear, from my count, 110 persons who actually testified, gave three-minute their impact of their opinions on the matter during the course of our public hearing phase. And of course, that was good for those who would come to Columbia. We did get a lot of written testimony from a lot of people, some of which I have not had a chance to look at because, number one, it was so much, and number two, some of the written testimony we just got today. So I wish we had time to really read a little bit more into those things. I do take them very seriously because I know that the decisions we make are very important decisions. Since July 7th, I've heard from many people who waited for hours with no food or water and ultimately had to go to work, pick up their children, drive for hours, get home before dark, and all those other kinds of things. I think it was even a wet day at some point, so some folk had to travel through the storm. I know that polling tells us that 75% of our residents do not support the abortion ban. So, I mean, and you know, polls can be made to say anything people won't pose to say, but I believe that it's important that we have a little bit more time to actually consider the draft that we have in front of us. I value everybody's opinions. I value the opinions of everyone who stood up. Some folk consigned our souls to hell. You know, they were very passionate about it, and some were very sanctimonious, some were Pharisaic, and some were condemnatory. But we listened to everybody and listened very intently in an attempt to try to get some input on how they felt about it, and you all were not very, you didn't hold back. I'll just say it like this. There's some things about this bill that I'm not ready to embrace this bill yet because I need more clarity. You know, I would have loved to have seen this committee go over the state and have public hearings at the various regions in the state, which I think would have been beneficial to us. But that's okay. But I do think that we do need time to look at some of the intended and unintended consequences of what this bill is, and we've had some discussions about that, and I hope that we'll get a little bit more discussions about that as time goes by. I appreciate all of those folk who say they're champions of the unborn. But I do hope that as you consider yourself champions of the unborn, that you will also consider making yourself champions of the born. Because a lot of times we're concerned with things until birth, and then all of a sudden our orientation, all of a sudden our thrust, all of a sudden our interest seems to wane when the birth has taken place. I know that, Mr. Chairman, you indicated that some of us have talked to doctors about the medical provisions of this bill, and I will tell you, I really would have loved to have had the opportunity to have some doctors stand before us and really take our questions, because I'm not exactly sure that we've heard enough from a committee standpoint. For some of us, I know we've heard enough because our minds were made up from the beginning, but I'm one of those folk who want to hear a little bit more, and I was hoping that we'd be able to do that. As a lawyer, and also as a person who served on the Judiciary Committee as a subcommittee chairman, I do understand that when we're writing laws, there are sometimes very unintended consequences for the things that we put together. I would like to have more clarity on the issue of IVF, birth control, uh, more definitive about when a pregnant woman's life is at risk. Are we talking about her life, life and death? Are we talking about some other things that may very well occur that might impair her health? And so those are the kinds of things that I want to be very concerned about. I am very concerned about. And I would have wished that we've been able to take a lot more testimony on that. Now, of great concern to me is the whole matter of exceptions. And I know that we've heard a plethora of testimony that says, pass this bill with no exceptions, because there are no circumstances in life by which a person is conceived that, we should look at giving persons who have conceived some options, to some say-so. I'm not exactly sure that this whole notion of body autonomy is something that we need to toss out the window. I think that it's something that I'd love to have a little bit more discussion about, because I think that's very important. When we were mandated to wear masks, I heard a lot of folks talking about body autonomy. I don't want to wear them, but now we throw that notion. I'm not saying I endorse the concept. I just want to hear and learn a little bit more about it, which I think is very important. Now, as it relates to the matter of victims of abuse, coercion, rape, and incest, I really think that we need to examine that a little further. We've talked so much about the physical health, but what about the emotional health? Someone breaks into your house, they attack you, they rape you, they take advantage of your body, you become pregnant. You know what this committee is saying? Too bad. I mean, that's the response that we're giving. Someone takes advantage of someone who is physically and mentally impaired, who has the body organs to conceive a child, and they get taken advantage of. This committee says, too bad. I mean, that's essentially all that we're sending back out, is too bad about the circumstances that caused this pregnancy, because it is life, and so therefore too bad. Now, I have real concerns about that. Underage children who get pregnant, preteens. I think one of the persons who spoke to us talked about a situation of a 10 or 12-year-old child who could not do a full term, whose body just wasn't ready. But, are we going to say to people like that, too bad? I mean, we have so many unintended consequences, or maybe intended consequences, that we need to discuss a little further. If life begins at conception, is it time for child support to start at conception? Are we going to grab these putative fathers and say, look, it's time for you to go to family court? She going to the doctor, you go into family court because you've impregnated her. And so it's time for you to pay some support. Well, maybe that may very well be something people want to do. I don't know that. But it's, this whole matter has been something that I have been very mixed emotion about. And I'm going to tell a story. I was not going to tell it, but I think I need to, Mr. Remus, since you told us story. And when I was in law school, we became pregnant, me and my wife, okay? And I kept coming back from law school in the first year, Mr. Chairman, and going to the doctor with her. When we got to the doctor's office, a third or fourth visit, the doctor called us in for a private session. And he said that there's some issues with this fetus. I'm gonna look like I'm on both sides on this, but I want you to tell the story. And you all gonna have to decide. The doctor didn't decide. He informed us. We have to make the decision about which way we want to go. Because of our faith and values, we united with other members of our faith community, and we prayed, which is what you're supposed to do, I guess. And out of it came that, well, we are going to go and have this child. That was the choice we made. And that was our decision. The decision was our decision. It was not the law's decision. We didn't consult with the law to make that decision. And I don't think the law ought to be imposing the kinds of things that this law imposes upon women. I just don't believe that. That's just fundamentally the way I believe that we have a choice, and quite frankly, if this is against God, then we will be accountable to God for the decisions that we make. And that's just the way it is. So it may sound like I'm on both sides of the fence, but I just want to relay this real life experience. I think we made the right choice. As a matter of fact, I know we did. But guess what? I didn't need the government to tell me that I could or could not make that decision. I think that the opportunity to speak with a professional, a doctor, who could provide me with the best medical knowledge and the best medical advice is something that ought to be between me, my wife, and the doctor, and God. And so once we make that decision, we are accountable for all of our decisions. And so once it's done, but it was our decision to make. Mr. Chairman, I love what we're trying to do here. I really do. But I think that we need to address this issue of exceptions, even though most folks say we ought not have any. I think that there's a great case that can be made for us to at least consider a little bit more some of the literature and some of the real life situations, like my own. If my wife had been raped, or if she had been taken advantage of by a relative, I'm not exactly sure that the choice that we made would have been the choice that we made. But I appreciated the fact that I had the right to make my own choice about this and to stand before my God, not the court, not before my judge, but before my God, and remain accountable for the decisions that we have made. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to throw that out for whatever it's worth, or my good friend like to say for whatever it's worth department, to give you some idea. But I just think too bad is a terrible response for us to give someone who has been entangled in an unfortunate situation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Representative